Hi, and welcome back to part 7 of the webinar series on the multilingual academic corpus of assignments, writing and speech macaws by Bruno Sommer, Adriana Picarel, Alexei Novikov, and Dr. Shelley Staples. This webinar is the last in our series and will focus on culture, in particular, typical Russian versus US food. As you're watching this webinar, in some way you're already involved with macaws, either directly or indirectly. If you'd like to get more involved, please let us know, because one of the central principles of macaws is that it is created for instructors and with the help of instructors. As you might remember, the previous webinar in the series focused on the creation of DDL materials targeting lexicogrammar in both Portuguese and Russian. The focus of this webinar will be on culture, which you might not have expected is possible with the use of Learn a Corpora. In this activity, there are two snippets of concordance lines. So the left concordance lines are based on texts about a trip to a restaurant in the US, and the concordance lines to the right here are based on texts about typical Russian foods. So the general question that is posed for the students here is, do you notice any differences or maybe even similarities in food items and how they are paired? A fuller prompt can be found in the supplemental PDF materials. So the key word in context here, which is again in the middle, here and here, is the Russian preposition s, which means with. So to the left and to the right of the preposition are examples of food items. So here is fish with rice, and here is coffee with milk, for example. So note that not all the examples are necessarily related to food. So here, for example, is we with friends, which in Russian just means my friends and I, yeah, there's another example of my friends and I here. So the purpose of this activity is for students to notice the differences and similarities between how the foods are paired in the US and Russia, but also how to practice instrumental case in Russian, which instrumental case in Russian is triggered by the preposition s, so which is the key word in context here. So in the next couple of slides, I will zoom in on each of the concordances individually. As you can see, the words of interest here, which are again in the middle of concordance lines, are first of all the Russian preposition s in green, which means with, and second, the words in blue to the right of the preposition, denoting food items. Important are also the words to the left of the preposition that are not highlighted, which also refer to food. The case in point here is how food items are paired. For example, burger with cheese, pizza with pineapple, or ramen with chicken, fish, or tofu. Here's the second concordance with examples of Russian foods this time. Here the same idea of food pairings applies, but this time very different. For example, meat jello with chicken, or blini with jam, or even herring under the fur coat with mayonnaise, eggs, and beets. Yum! So after the students worked with both of the concordances and discussed questions related to differences and similarities of how foods are paired, the students are then given a worksheet with a table that looks like this, and they fill it out based on the examples from the two concordances and comment on whether this pairing is typical in their home country, which may also be different from the US, and there might also be differences within the US, of course. So the first pairing here is given as an example, which is macaroni and cheese. It is typical both in Russia and the US, with slight differences in what it looks like in Russia. So it's more pasta with cheese, and in the US, which is the typical mac and cheese. So one thing to remind you here is that in this activity, the students are exploring culture, but they also get to see and work with examples of instrumental case in Russian. So this connection between grammar and genre, or topic in this case, is essential for macaws. So thank you again for watching this webinar. And to remind you, this was our last webinar in the series. So if you haven't checked out the other webinars, here is an outline. Thank you, and bye-bye.